As I entered my junior year of high school, I enrolled in a course called Independent Study Mentorship, a class designed to challenge high school students by having them create something new and groundbreaking in their community. What I did was created something called the Martian Project, a program designed to teach children tolerance and embracing their own eccentricities. Now, the most important question I've been asked about my project is why. I'd like you all to think back to a time when you were younger. Whether you were the bully, the victim, or just an innocent bystander, we've all experienced bullying at some point in our lives. Bullying has become a silent epidemic that we can no longer ignore. According to the National Education Association, 160,000 children miss school every day due to fears of being bullied. According to the American Association of Suicidology, suicide rates among 10 to 14-year-olds have grown by 50% in the last 3 decades. 90% of 4th through 8th graders report being victims of bullying, and this is just a small snippet of statistics. But what pushed me over the edge to really do this project was not these statistics, but John Cusack. In his movie Martian Child, John Cusack plays David Gordon, a struggling author who adopts Dennis, a child who's convinced he's from Mars. David tries to convince Dennis that he would do a lot better on Earth if he would just try and fit in with everyone else. This eventually leads to the question that Dennis asks him, which is it good to be like everyone else? To which David doesn't have an answer. I myself remember feeling like I never fit in. I didn't fit in when I was younger. I felt like I related to Dennis a lot when I saw this movie because often I felt like I was from a different planet. From this was the birth of the Martian Project. Now, what is the Martian Project? It's a program in which I visited 6 3rd grade students once a week for 6 weeks. Each week we discussed different forms of bullying and how they can be solved. As examples of these lessons, the week 1 lesson was called the Orange Experiment. I had them each select an orange out of a bag, and each orange had something different on the outside about it. And some of them I colored them with Sharpie just so they would look different from all the others. I then peeled the oranges and had them find their original orange. They couldn't. This shows that even though we're all different on the outside, we're all the same on the inside. Week 2 was titled Unique Colors. I had each student draw a self-portrait of themselves, paying close attention to their skin color. They had to combine colors to create their own skin color that was as close to their actual skin color as possible. They then named these colors, such as peach, olive, or even as one of my students said, X-Man. This showed that there is a unique and beautiful combination of colors, rather than just black or white. And in the final week, called Masked Identities, I had each student wear an identical mask and play a game of Simon Says. If they lost this game, they had to sit aside from the group and could no longer interact with the group until the game was over. This showed that uniquenesses are what makes life beautiful, rather than monotonous. And finally, the results of this. Probably the most significant result was the gender attitudes. As we started the program, the girls would always sit on one side of me while the boys would sit on the other. Every time I would pair them up in groups of mixed genders, they would always complain. By the final week, they were no longer segregated by gender, and they all sat mixed up on the table, and they would no longer complain about being paired up. The next one is self-confidence. I had allowed myself 2 observation days at the beginning of this project, and I noticed that there was always one person who spoke up for the rest of the group, and people would always sit back and say nothing. By the end of these 6 weeks, I noticed that there was no true leader. Everyone was kind of the same, and everyone would speak up for themselves. And finally, their overall relations. I always noticed that there was at least one person that would pick out another and single them out and try to not involve them in our activities, but by the end I saw that their cliques kind of come down, and there was no picking and there was no hatefulness, and so their overall relations greatly improved. Even if in some small way, I think the Martian Project really had an effect on these 6 students. I myself grew. I saw myself become more tolerant, and I began to accept myself throughout teaching this program. So I really think that I got just as much out of the Martian Project as my students did. I'm not going to say that the Martian Project can completely stop bullying, but even if it can teach one child tolerance and embracing themselves, then I will say that the Martian Project will have done its job. Because of course, if you can change the world around you, you can change the world. Thank you.